Welcome everybody, I'm Rabbi Drew Kaplan and this is the 25th episode of JewishDrinking.com's podcast and video series. Tomorrow night is Passover, so I've got 4 cups of wine on my mind and I'm very stoked because Rabbi Ilana Susskind joins us as we discuss the danger of demons with the 4 cups of wine. That's right, you heard it. 4 cups of wine are susceptible to demons, aren't they? Well, at least that's the question that comes up in the Babylonian Talmud, and I'm really excited because Rabbi Susskind, many, we could go on and on for her bio. Let me just say she's the co-founder of the Pomegranate Initiative. It's a very brand new, go ahead, check it out. And also, she's done stuff for JewSchool.com. She's been involved with a bunch of things. I'm very excited, I hope you are, and enjoy the show.
It's a kind of a fun topic because we're talking about the 4 cups, but then the rabbis get distracted, as they often do, and wander off into this long discussion about demonology. There's a couple of things that I really love about it. Not just the discussion of the demons, but also the fact, apparently unremarked, not only by the Gemara itself, but by the commentators, because I checked. No one, Rashi doesn't comment it, Rashbam doesn't comment on it, that the informant about some of this information is himself a demon who's apparently pals with a rabbi. No one comments on this. Fascinating. I think it would be very cool to have a demon pal with an in into the demonology world.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to mention, just as a quick, brief biographical introduction to Rabbi Susskind, for those who don't know, she is co-director of the Pomegranate Initiative, which is a cool brand new thing. She is also a graduate of Ziegler Rabbinical School, and also, and for the bloggers out there, she's the managing editor, correct, for JewSchool.com for how many years?
Oh gosh, I don't know, a few. I took over from Ben Murrain, who took over from Dan Saradsky, so I don't know, like 3, 4, 5 years, something like that.
Very neat. And on top of all this, she also is a fellow, right? A Kollel fellow at Yeshiva Maharat, correct?
That works.
What's the language?
I don't know, student. It's good.
Okay, all right.
I'm a rabbinical student again. I just can't keep away. I'll just collect them all.
The rabbis in the Mishnah say they're the very least amount of cups anybody should have, even the poorest of the poor who are furnished their provisions from the public pot, as it were. 4 cups is the very bare minimum anybody should have Seder night. So the rabbis, here, at least in the Talmud Bavli, the conversation is actually very different in the Talmud Yerushalmi. But since the Mishnah didn't actually specify why there should be 4, they say what the 4 cups, structurally where in the Seder night these 4 cups should occur. They don't give any reasons as to why it should be. So the Babylonian Talmud says, what's going on with these 4 cups, right?
Yes.
But the problem that they are so deeply concerned about, the conversation starts on Pesachim 109b, 110a, and continues therefore afterwards, is they are so deeply concerned and such high anxiety over how could you have an even number of cups on Passover night, because you should never have an even number of cups ever. It's dangerous, right?
Or an even number of anything, actually. Even numbers are apparently super dangerous, no matter what they are.
Right. And so I'm fascinated because I think of this as primarily a Babylonian problem, a Persian problem, if you will. It's not so much an issue in Israel, but yet there's a couple of Tannaitic texts and some early rabbinic texts that appear that says you should be very careful about doubling things. What I found fascinating, Rabbi Susskind, is that there are 2 early rabbinic texts that are portrayed to be from their Tannaitic, and one of them on 109b mentions 4 different activities you shouldn't do in pairs, and one of which is drinking. You shouldn't drink in pairs. And this is actually amplified on 110a, that you shouldn't shotek falim damo barosho, that you shouldn't, anybody who drinks in a twofold fashion, that's their own fault. They got themselves in that position. This really is really the entire context for the Babylonian Talmud is the danger inherent in 2 of anything, not the least of which is cups, right?
Right. Well, I mean, they also specify pooping, wiping, which is odd, eating, right? And of course, Congress.
Yes. Right. And then the rabbis have to figure out, what does that mean that you're doing these things in a twofold fashion? There's aren't there ways of getting around it? So I find, but the rabbis are trying to find ways that permit having 4 cups. But they also are very deeply aware of the problem of pairing up anything. So it's at a really, like, it's at a tight tension that you shouldn't be doing anything in pairs. There's danger inherent in that, but there are also workarounds, right?
Yeah, although, it's interesting. I wonder about, like, why pairs, right? I sort of have a theory, although I don't know if it really works, which is, like, if you have 2 of something at the same time, one of them is open, right? You have 2 cups in front of you. It's like you're inviting somebody. Although I don't know how that works with, like, wiping. Like, I'm not so sure. Maybe not.
Yeah. So, I'm just going to put it out there. I think it's probably arising from the Sasanian Persian context in which these rabbis are speaking, that there must be something against doubling of things, and especially with regards to demons being the potential cause for harm around here. I'm going to say one thing, but then I'm going to switch gears. So the way that the sugya kicks off is actually started. So it has Rav Nachman, who says, well, there's this verse. It's a Leil Shimurim. It's a night that's guarded from danger, from anything that could potentially do any harm, including these mazikin. So therefore, even though, yes, there are 4 cups and they're doubled, nevertheless, this night gets an exception. It is outside of the realm of danger possibly being caused by these demons. However, the very next line is actually really fascinating. I think it's really important. It's Rava. And Rava pops up throughout this entire sugya, and he's really standing up as a defender of 4 cups being okay, and really trying to find ways that it somehow, the Seder night is an exception. And so he, on 109b, he says, look, the cup of blessing combines for good and not for bad. Meaning, yeah, we have 4 cups. You could do 2 cups of anything. It just doesn't, it's somehow outside of the realm of being susceptible to danger or demons. Although we keep seeing him pop up throughout, it's followed by a later generation, Ravina, who says, you know what? The rabbis, when they created these 4 cups, it wasn't 4 cups as an entire set of 2 cups of 2, but rather each one's on their own. Meaning, it's 1 cup, that's done. Another cup, that's done. They're not in doubles. They're not in pairs. They're not 4. They're just simply different cups, right? That's his loophole.
I actually think that interchange is very interesting because it's 2 different solutions to the problem. One of which is, no, it is pairs, but Koshel Bracha is a safety device, right? You're invoking God's name, that's a protection, versus Ravina's solution, which is pairs mean you've joined them together, and these are actually separate. And actually, it's the next line after that sort of is an explanation of that, right? Where the Gemara itself comes back and brings up one of the other things that you shouldn't do in pairs, and says, well, when you do something in pairs like that, what you're really doing is, it's not that you intended to have 2 things, and so you're drinking 1, 2, 3, 4. It's actually that you had one thing, and then you went back and changed your mind and did it again. So in that sense, it's actually the reverse, that when you have 2 things like that, you're not combining them, actually. So it's not pair. That isn't even a pair at all.
Right. And the rabbis there try to, what they do is they say, you know what, you can make interruptions. You can head out to the marketplace. You can go outside. You can do something that you have 1 cup. Oh, great. Now you just hit the restart button, come back and start drinking again, and you're fine.
I love it where he's like, my mom does this. My mom comes in and she makes sure that I'm only going to have each one separately.
Right. Well, yeah. So Abaye, he would have 1 cup, and as soon as he got down to just 1 cup at a time, his mom would come with 2 more. So, chas v'shalom, he should only have, he should have 2. He needs to have a 3rd cup.
No, you gotta have 3.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
My mom's watching out for me. She makes sure I get good and drunk.
Right. Never. Yeah. Why only double fist when you can triple fist? So.
Exactly.
Yeah, interesting, because then of course you have Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak, his servant would do the exact same thing as Abaye's mom. And then, but yet the Gemara says, yeah, but that's just for important people. They can have people serve them. But what if you're by yourself, right? You're still running the danger. You're not always going to have someone there to rush in another cup for you.
So that you should have 10 to make sure of it.
Right. So then it transitions. They say, look, if we're going to be talking about the Mishnah, talking about 4 cups that the rabbis said you need to have at the very bare minimum, what about another instance in which the rabbis established that you should have an even number of cups for anything? And so they bring up this brisa, which is mentioned in full on Ketubot 8b, which was, quick pitch, the subject of the podcast episode 2 weeks ago. You can go check it out, of how many cups did the rabbis institute for the house of a mourner. They said 10, but they also added 4 later on. People got too drunk at 14 cups at a mourner's house, so they said, let's just go back down to 10. Here, whether it's Ula or was taught in a brisa, they say, well, it's 10. And this is what's really fascinating.
No problem.
Right. Well, this is what's fascinating with the sugya, which is that they say, well, 10, you know what? 10 is too many. It's like beyond the threshold for where danger could even reach. So they say, you know what? No, it's not 10, 8. 8. Now that's a small enough number that it's susceptible to danger. That's a real problem. And then Rav Chisda and Rabbi Bar Rav Huna say, no. You know what? We can get away with 8. It's 6 that's a problem. 6 is a low enough number that's susceptible to demons. And then you get Rabba and Rav Yosef in the 3rd generation, and they say, no, 6 is fine. It's 4 you need to be worried about. And then Rava, of course, Rava, and then Abaye, they come back and they say, what are you talking about 4? Actually, 4, you can get away with 4. So they basically bargain it down to saying 10's fine, 8's fine, 6's fine, 4's fine. 2, though, that falls within the realm of susceptibility to demons.
So if we had stopped with 10, I would have assumed that, the issue is really like, actually, after 8, you lose count. And so you're okay, because nobody knows that it's pairs anymore.
Right, yeah. Right. Well, the rabbis are fine with 10. 10, they're not worried about, that. You can drink, although it is funny because later on they do talk about, this is a reality that we all face. If you're drinking a bunch of cups of wine or any beverage, it's very possible you'll lose count. And so they throughout talk about various strategies different rabbis employed, if ways of counting, like Rava would count the different beams of his house to keep track. And of course it also comes up like, what if you don't remember how many cups you had? You're in danger of any but an even number.
Depending on whether or not you count the fact that 10 is fine and 8 is fine and 6 is fine and 4 is fine, but
right.
Not 2.
Right. So on Pesachim 110b, it comes up. So Ravina says, again, in Rava's name, Rava pops up again, that what if you drank in pairs? Rava is being quoted by Ravina. Again, we have this relationship between Rava and Ravina, as we saw on the bottom of 109b. But Ravina said in the name of Rava that if you're not really sure if you had pairs, maybe you should take the safe route and just drink another cup. Make it odd. But then there's another way of, which is that maybe you should be lenient and not drink the next one. Maybe you're fine. Maybe you actually already had an odd number. Don't drink another cup, because then you could arrive on an even number at cups. So it's fascinating because it's not really sure what you should do there.
Well, right. Because if you've forgotten, you might be fine, and then you're screwing it up by drinking another one, or vice versa. So
you're tipping the scales.
But they have a solution. They do come up with a solution, right?
That's true.
Because we have to get into what the danger actually is. It's not just like a random danger. This is where we get into the demons.
Rava, again, also still 110a, he says, you know what, or at least the Talmud points out that Rava is going according to his reasoning, that he would, when he had a bunch of other sages over, he would be fine with them having departed at just 4 cups of wine on just a regular night, right? They're just hanging out, a bunch of sages drinking wine. And as we know from actually other contexts, Rava loves his wine. He is probably the biggest proponent of wine in the Talmud, and which, for anybody who loves Talmud, knows this is really strange, considering that his student, Rav Papa, was the biggest beer brewer in the Talmud. So it's really fascinating that they have that relationship, that you have the biggest beer brewer is a student of, like, really the biggest wine proponent. Rava, by the way,
I did not know that.
Which, by the way, and this is very timely as we're coming up to Pesach, what would Rava do every Erev Pesach? He'd spend the entire afternoon drinking wine in preparation for getting his appetite ready for matzah. So he was really into wine. We don't know if he was still counting all the wine that he was drinking on Erev Pesach. Hopefully he got to an odd number, but
maybe the Koshel Bracha protects him, even on Erev Pesach.
Right. So that was his preparation for Pesach. Just drink wine all afternoon leading up to the Seder.
You can tell he was not doing the cooking.
Yeah. You never know. It could be a really fast
child thing.
Yeah. So here on whatever instance this was, when the sages would come by and they would have only 4 cups, he would be fine with letting them go at 4, right? So Rava really comes out of this sugi as a really proponent and really trying to defend the Mishnah as being okay with 4. He's saying, whether it's the koshel bracha doesn't count, right? It doesn't combine for bad. Whether it's saying 4 is really a large enough number that it's not susceptible to the pairs of being damaged by the demons.
Mm-hmm.
So Rava really comes out of the sugya in that fashion, that he's this staunch, even though he's concerned about pairs, at the same time he's not concerned about 4 being really susceptible to it. Now we get to what I know you're really interested in, is the epistemological aspect of the rabbis quoting demons, right?
I think it's great. This is sort of very the fact that he's chatting with his friend Yosef the demon is just like a lot. I just find that incredibly interesting that no one says anything about it. Rav Yosef and Yosef the demon, are walking down the street discussing demonology. Oh, well, the reason, says Yosef the demon, that we have this huge problem with pairs is because Ashmedai is appointed. That's his job, So, and that's actually sort of where so now that you know the reason that pairs are dangerous, okay, great. So you can start discussing about, what do you do about it? So, either, pairs are maybe less problematic than you might think, because the king of the demons is not going to concern himself with regular people, only people who are prominent, maybe, or the kings may be temperamental and they act one way or another way, and you never know from one day to the next. So you can have this argument about what is the temperament of kings, that they are going to either target people or they won't target people over their imbibing of wine in pairs. And apparently, actually, Yosef the demon gets around, because he's not only friends with Rav Yosef, but he also chats up Rav Papa.
Yeah.
And he's apparently he informs Rav Papa that drinking wine in pairs, 2, is dangerous, but 4, all right, we might hurt you, but we're not going to kill you.
Yeah. Which, by the way, makes sense. Which makes sense.
So
for Rav Papa.
It doesn't matter whether you've drunk the 2 glasses or not. So you better keep and pay attention to this.
Which by the way, works. It works with the paradigm
with 4 cups. We can harm you, but only if you do it intentionally. If you do it unintentionally, we're not going to bother with you, or we're not allowed to bother with you. Not super clear.
Although
not any explanation of why either.
Yeah. Although it is fascinating, because it kind of works within his teacher Rava's paradigm of 4 being just beyond the reach of the demons. But,
right. So it's ameliorative to have all 4 cups instead of 2. Although it's interesting, wouldn't you think it would be the reverse? It will injure you for 1 pair, but will kill you for 2 seems more likely than the other way around. But all right, it's not my math. And then the Gemara kind of jumps in with, oh, wait, but look, now that we know what the problem is, here's a real solution. And they give you a ritual to do. So the first thing you do is you take the thumb of your right hand and you put it in your left hand. And then you take the thumb of your left hand and you put it in your right hand. And then you say, you and I are 3. So you and your right hand and your left hand, or your right thumb and your left thumb, I guess, are actually 3 people. But if you hear a voice piping up, to make 4, then you've got a problem because somebody is paying attention to you. So now you have to say, "Oh wait, no, we're you and I are 5," and if you then you might hear another voice popping up. "Oh, but we're 6." So I guess you have to do this ad infinitum so that however many demons are kind of pestering you, or however intent the demon is on pestering you, you have to make sure that you're always going to be uneven at the end. And apparently the Gemara even remarks that this actually happened once when they had to go to 101 before the demon finally gave up, and it popped. It just
wow.
Which I guess would be maybe that's a reason why they don't want to keep up with it too much. I don't know.
Yeah.
It clearly doesn't happen too often. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know, has it ever happened to you?
No, it hasn't happened. But it reminds me of a lot of the stuff in the first parak of Bavli Brachot, where there's a lot of different stuff around demons. Like, you've got like 1,000 to one side, 10,000 to another side of someone, that these are all around people, and you can, sprinkle the ashes of a black cat, etc. So there's a lot of, it sounds very much unique to the Babylonian context, as opposed to what they might have experienced in the land of Israel. Mm-hmm. And I will point out one thing you didn't mention was the epistemological, you did mention, which is the epistemological aspect of speaking to a supernatural being such as demons. But we do see elsewhere in the Gemara that it does happen, that rabbis report. I was told by this, Malachei Ashar, whatever it is, this ministering angel, like we see it on Nidarim 20b, 20a, where someone reports that, an angel told them something. So it happens in the Talmud.
Right. Yeah, and it's interesting because you can't always assume either what exactly you're going to get out of these interesting supernatural beings, like Joseph the demon, who apparently is, well, we don't know, he's not as malevolent, at least. He seems to be like palling around with the rabbis. He gets something out of it. And even warns them, I don't know if it's here, it might be later, where he even warns them against witches, which are apparently worse than demons. Don't hang out with witches.
Because they're real people.
Well, but they're really malevolent in a way that demons are just following their nature, but witches, they're not nice.
Yes. It's true. I will say, I mentioned the Sasanian Persian context for the demons, and even it's fascinating because on the top of 110b, the Gemara is even self-aware about this socio-cultural difference. Mm-hmm. Along geographical lines, where it says that Rav Dimi from Nahardea was particular, even with regard to signs on a barrel, etc. That there was an incident and the barrel burst. But the Gemara says in the land of Israel, they were not particular with regard to pairs. And then they say the rule of the matter is all who are particular about pairs, the demons are particular. And if one isn't particular, they're not particular with him. So you don't need to be concerned about pairs and demons.
What that reminds me of is the whole thing with the dreams, with the interpretation of dreams from Brachot.
Yeah.
Where the dream follows the interpreter. Like there's a kind of a parallel there, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost not necessarily like Mida Keneged Mida, but there is a relationship, a correspondence, for sure. But I think also part of this self-awareness that the Gemara is bringing to it is saying, yeah, over there in Israel, they don't care. Like that's not part of their socio-cultural makeup, but yet here in the land of in Persia, we are. This is an issue for us.
I wonder what they thought of it, like being self-aware of it. Like, were they thinking, in Israel there are fewer demons? The land has kedusha, so the demons don't go there, or are they just thinking like, whatever? If you don't pay attention to them, they go along with their business. Yeah. I don't know. It's just a question.
Yeah. And I'd also be very curious, the opposite. What did the sages in the land of Israel think about those in Bavel?
Right. Like, oh, those superstitious Babylonians, what are they doing? Or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think there is a stark difference, especially, I'm going to bring it back to the four cups, which is in the Bavli, when it comes to the four cups, their central concern is, oh my gosh, they're pairs, there's danger with demons, right? That is their concern, and throughout they keep bringing these things up. In the Yerushalmi, in the Palestinian Talmud, really the conversation is, well, what are these corresponding to? And then you have a handful of different opinions from the rabbis of, oh, well, the 4 cups corresponds to this, it corresponds to that. It's not, there's no demon issue. They're not worried about these things. They're trying to find meaning in what these 4 could represent or correspond to. Whereas here, they're not interested in correspondence. They're concerned about danger.
Right. I mean, even if you go back to the Mishnah itself, the main thing seems to be that this mitzvah is so important that you even give people money for it out of the charity fund, right? Like the focus is really on sort of like a social, not social justice, but like, like focusing on the needs of the community here, where this is sort of this digression into an interesting, metaphysical discussion about, what sort of beings are going to get involved in your drinking of pears.
Oh, for sure. I mean, this is very different than the Mishnah, and as far as their range of concerns.
Clearly.
Yeah.
I really enjoy these little excursions into the sort of agadic narratives of the highly populated metaphysics of the Bavli. I just think they're very fun. And they're not necessarily, from their point of view, I expect it's much more serious, right? That they're worried about these life and death issues. And actually, like, in this time when we're all hunkering down and avoiding the swarms of demons that surround us so thickly that we cannot even see them, I have a certain empathy for, the fear of, what happens when, what can you do to protect yourself against the unseen? And you have to figure out, like, these little rituals that protect you. And is it pairs, or is it, we have to avoid joining together with others, right? It's very poignant at the moment.
Yes. Yeah, you can't always see it, but you know that it could cause danger.
And what do you do to respond to that? You have to figure out, what are the rules? How do you protect yourself? What can you do to have your mom bring you two glasses of wine while you drink your third, or whatever it is?
And then, leave it 6 feet away, Purell and Clorox it down.
Exactly.
But, by the way, this whole COVID-19 stuff has generated a whole new set of rituals and behaviors that we never saw before.
It'll be interesting, just sort of in general principles. I think it's super interesting, the halachic creativity that we're seeing around this also. Like, so many people are working to figure out ways to find leniencies to allow people to have a Seder when they're locked in their house and not able to go out. Like, what do you, having a Seder by yourself is really strange.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, people invent new rituals, as you say, and people are, they're also looking at, like, how do we make the halakha relevant for this, like, really difficult moment? And how can we be creative and apply what we know, and so that we both protect ourselves and are able to function in a religious structure.
Yeah.
Not to get too serious. Sorry.
No, that's good. That's good.
Before I officially end this episode and give Rabbi Susskind a good send-off, I just want to give you a sneak peek at not next week's episode, but 2 weeks from now episode. I'm going to be taking a break for Passover on beer for Havdalah in the Babylonian Talmud. So if you like the Babylonian Talmud discussion in this episode, stay tuned for 2 weeks from now. Professor Jordan Rosenblum joins us for discussing beer for Havdalah in the Babylonian Talmud.
In Babylonia, which is a beer drinking culture, that question, it's only there. It's only in the Bavli. It's only Babylonian Talmud that they start to say, well, wait a second, does it have to be wine?
Thank you so much, Rabbi Susskind, for joining us, especially just days away from Pesach. And this is a very timely conversation about the 4 cups of wine. So thank you so much.
It was super fun to do this anytime. It was great.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right.